Peace. Why does man go to war? Because there is war already inside him. He has not found subjective peace, and so cannot escape from either war within himself or the war without, which is only really a corollary to the war within. So try to attenuate your ego and find permanent peace within you. Then alone will you be able to transcend all the war outside. But how is one to decide about conduct under perplexing situations? Examine first what reigns in you in the situation. If it is peace, yield to it. If it is cowardice, well, stand up and fight against it. That is, kill your enemy subjectively, that is, at the desire level first, and then the objective enemy can be approached if need be. The fight within you is between peace on the one side and the different feelings, thoughts, and emotions on the other side. Can you speak of mind and how does it know peace and such things? The most universal of all desires in man is unequivocal and expressed in the spontaneous statement made by all alike. I want peace of mind. It means that the activity of the mind is never our ultimate goal. Examining this statement closely and impartially, we find that peace is the real goal of man's desire. But in his utter inability to extricate himself from the clutches of the mind, man links the mind also to that desire for absolute peace and claims himself to be the enjoyer. But alas, when the mind, freed from all its activities, comes into contact with the peace it desired, it finds itself merged and lost in that peace, and thus returns to its real nature. Therefore, it is one's own real nature that everybody seeks, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Can you speak of the perception and the I? Perception is composed of the lighting up by the I principle consciousness plus the objective part of the perception. Take, for example, seeing. The seeing cannot exist in an unmanifested form, either before or after the activity of seeing. But the I principle does exist as unmanifested, both before and after the activity. And the very same I principle, or pure consciousness, is manifested in the seeing as well. Therefore, the object is the manifestation of the I alone, and not of the senses. What is the nature and object of perception? A jnani or sage perceives the absolute, diversified as objects. Ignorant men, identifying themselves with the gross physical body, perceive gross physical objects. Others, standing as mind, perceive only subtle objects. Yet jnanis, standing as consciousness itself, perceive only consciousness. Well, so then, what is the truth of perception? I am Atma, the self-luminous consciousness. It may be said that I first manifest myself as objectless consciousness by my own nature or self-luminosity. It is this objectless consciousness that expresses itself as an idea or sensual object, and you say you perceive it. But when the so-called perception takes place, the apparent object loses its limitations, and its content, consciousness, stands as the objectless self, or Atma. Therefore, it is nothing but the self that you perceive. The only thing needed is for you to remove the colored spectacles of your senses and mind, and then you will see reality in all its nakedness and its full glory. What happens when you see an object? First, you see form. This belongs to the field of perception, which is the outcome of the senses. Next, you join it on to innumerable concepts, which belong to the realm of the mind. And lastly, you attribute a permanence to it which belongs to your own self and is denoted by the it in relation to all objects. So all these together go to make the so-called object. But when you emphasize the it, which was always there, all through, the other two naturally disappear, and the it, which was so long unknown, now becomes known in the real sense. What do you see? I see the scene or form, which is only a synonym for seeing. Likewise, sound is only a synonym for hearing. I hear the hearing or sound. But these, the seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling, can never become the objects of seeing and hearing and tasting and such. Therefore, you do not see anything. You do not hear anything, nor do you touch anything or taste anything. And you certainly do not smell anything. A form can never exist independently of seeing, even in thought. For thought is only subtle perception. Form is seeing itself and never outside it. This means not only not outside the body, but also not outside the seen, or not separate from seeing. When understood as such, perception ceases to have any meaning whatsoever. The realist philosophy, built upon the reality of gross objects, and the idealist philosophy, built upon the reality of the mind as thoughts or ideas, both of these crumble before this argument, before this examination and deep inquiry. So there is only perception without its corresponding object. But a perception, thought, or feeling without the taint of any object is pure knowledge or reality itself. Therefore, even when you see an object, you really see only yourself, Atma. Abstract thinking is impossible without bringing in some concrete object or other in which to support it. But this rule has two exceptions. When abstract thinking is possible, when you take the thoughts, I am pure consciousness, or I exist. If you try to concentrate upon either of these two, you will find that before long your thought itself expires, leaving you as your real center in consciousness pure. Even in the case of these two thoughts, you should never allow the thought to become concretized in any form. You should only transcend all limitations by allowing that thought form to expire. This leads you on to the I, which is always Anubhava Spurana, the self-luminous experience. What is a perception? One answer is no perception really exists, either in the present, past, or future. A perception is the result of a perception, and it cannot exist independent of a perception. Therefore, there cannot be a percept either before or after perception. Perception goes into the make of the percept itself. Therefore, if you attempt to perceive the perception part of the percept has to be withdrawn and placed outside it in order to perceive it. But when the perception part is thus withdrawn, the percept crumbles and disappears. Thus, there is no percept during the perception also. It is the perception itself appearing as the percept for the time being. Therefore, the term percept is a misnomer. It is misnamed, for there is only perception. And perception being dependent upon consciousness for its very existence, it is nothing but consciousness. In a similar way, consciousness itself appears as an idea. And when consciousness tries to perceive the idea disappears and consciousness alone remains over. Therefore, all is consciousness. For a shorter approach, it can be said that a percept is nothing but the object and is representative of the whole world. Perception goes into the make of the concept, the percept, and therefore the percept is perception itself. Consciousness goes into the make of perception, and therefore perception is consciousness itself. In a similar way, consciousness goes into the make of the idea, and therefore the idea is consciousness itself, which means the world, gross as well as subtle, is nothing but consciousness.